Good evening, and welcome to our second Soul on the Screen webinar. My name is Carillo, and I am the Executive Director of the Child Abuse Prevention Council for Contra Costa County. Our mission is to promote the safety of children and prevent child abuse and neglect in Contra Costa by raising community awareness, educating our community, and providing resources and support programs to families. Our Speak Up Be Safe program works with elementary and middle school students, parents, and teachers on child abuse prevention, bullying, sexual harassment prevention, and social media safety. Our Nurturing Parenting programs work with at-risk families, providing the much needed education and support. We also provide child abuse mandated reporter trainings and community education workshops. We mentor foster youth transitioning out of foster care, and we mentor parents working to reunify with their children after abuse has occurred, breaking the cycle of child abuse and neglect. We know that COVID-19 has created stress and isolation for families that can put vulnerable children at risk of child abuse and neglect. Our Nurturing Parenting program is working directly with families to address the isolation and the overwhelming stress by providing parent education, support, and access to the vital services needed during these uncertain times. Every $2,000 we raise supports a family with 6 months of weekly parent education, lowering the risk factors in the family that can lead to child abuse and neglect. This approach is proven to prevent child abuse and costs much less than the costly social service and mental health interventions needed after abuse has occurred. We hope you find tonight's presentation entertaining, all while knowing you are supporting a great cause. To get us started tonight, I would like to introduce Allison Mein. Allison has been an active volunteer for over 15 years, helping raise funds for our programs and raise awareness of child abuse prevention in our community. Allison will be our host for the evening. Allison?
Thank you, Carol. Tonight, we welcome local chef and entrepreneur Hugh Groman. Hugh grew up in Lafayette with a family that was passionate about cooking and entertaining. After attending Yale and working for many years in New York City, including at the famed Gramercy Tavern, he came back home to put his roots back down in Bay Area. His company, called the Hugh Groman Group, is a certified green business, and he has prepared food for such notables as Barack Obama, Mikhail Baryshnikov, Malcolm Gladwell, and Gloria Steinem. The Hugh Groman Group is comprised of 4 divisions that do everything from full-service catering to party platters to sliders catering. The latest division was added this year to help us get through the pandemic by offering high-quality fresh and frozen meals plus groceries delivered to your door. Hugh's commitment to excellence in cooking is only matched by the positive energy he exudes as a truly caring and empathetic person. And tonight, technical support is provided by Ersson Bartle. When you need someone to create that party feeling, DJ Ersson is the one to call. Ersson not only has a magical way of engaging our audience through music, but is also such a gracious, inspiring leader as the president of our International Live Events Association of Northern California. Being at home has not stopped her from sharing her love of music and continuously entertaining us through our screens. Along with DJing, Ersson also provides AV and streaming services for virtual and in-person events. If you have any questions tonight, please submit them in the Q&A box above, and we will ask you the questions during his presentation. And it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you Mr. Hugh Groman.
Hey,
Hi,
I'm Hugh Groman with the Hugh Groman Group. Thanks, Allison. Thank you for that nice introduction. I'm here with my friend Ersson Bartle. She's wearing a mask. We've got doors open. We've got windows open. We're doing everything we can to stay safe. And I'm really happy to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me to do this. Tonight, I'm going to demonstrate 2 cocktails and 2 hors d'oeuvres you can make for holiday events, for company in your backyard. These are great, delicious, easy hors d'oeuvres that are going to be real wows, and you'll make them for the rest of your lives. So who needs a drink? Okay, so we got 2 drinks. We're gonna do something called a bee's knees, which is a gin-based drink. And then we're gonna do a maple bourbon smash, which is a bourbon-based drink. And I'm gonna make 2 of each so that me and Ersson can both drink. To start out with the bee's knees, it's real simple. It's gin, honey syrup, fresh lemon juice, and it's served on the rocks. So to start out, I'm just gonna show you how to make honey syrup. Honey is really thick in and of itself. So you pour some honey into a container here. Let's see if it even pours. And you're basically gonna do equal parts honey and water, but this is like such a relaxed, casual kind of a thing. I think I'm gonna grab a little spoon. By the way, we're coming live from my house studios. Here we go. So I'm gonna put a couple tablespoons of honey in here. And then I'm just gonna put a little water in. And then I'm just gonna throw this in the microwave. You can do this a bunch of different ways. You can do it on the pot in the stove if you're making a bigger batch, but it's equal parts honey and water. And then I'm just gonna throw it in the microwave for like 30 seconds. And what that does is it softens the honey. It'll mix the honey and the water together, and then we'll be able to use it in the drink. So meanwhile, I'm going to combine the gin and the lemon juice in a container. So I'm gonna need 4 ounces of gin in order to make 2 drinks. This is called a jigger, and it's marked on the inside. It's special for bartenders, but you could just use a measuring cup, a clear glass measuring cup. And then the lemon juice is the same amount of lemon juice. So it's 4 ounces of lemon juice total. And then the honeymoon syrup is a total of 2 ounces for 2 drinks. And let's see here. So here it is. Normally you'd want to let this cool, but we're going to serve this on ice. It's going to be completely fine. Just do it hot. So let's measure out 2 ounces of this. Nailed it. Okay, this is exactly 2 ounces. Boom. Okay, so there it is. Now you're going to serve this on the rocks. And I'm going to put lots of ice because the drink itself is a little on the warm side now. That's okay, because it'll help dilute it, which is fine, A little dilution from the ice is delicious. And then I've got a couple of these little lemon peel garnishes that I just took off of a lemon. And then let's taste it. Okay. So now we're going to do our first toast. God bless our country. Here we go. Boom. Let's see. Taste it. Oops, it's delicious. Okay. Drink number 1. And I promise you, I'm not throwing that thing away. So.
Hey, Hugh, can I ask a quick question that someone wanted
Yes.
to know? Can you make bee's knees with something other than gin?
Well, you can. I guess it's not considered a bee's knees, but it would absolutely be delicious with vodka. It would probably be delicious with rum. I think you could make it with tequila, probably even bourbon too. Citrus and sweetness balances with a lot of things. So that's a good question.
Okay, thank you.
So next drink is the maple bourbon smash. So now I'm going to take 4 ounces of bourbon. And I guess I'll just rinse out my measuring cup a bit. So we're gonna do 4 ounces. Ersson, how's the drink?
It's good.
She gave the thumbs up. So we've got 4 ounces of bourbon, and then 2 ounces of maple syrup, and that's for 2 drinks again. And Allison's gonna be sending out, if she hasn't already, somebody is gonna be sending out all the recipes, so you don't have to remember all this stuff. Don't be taking notes. Okay, so 2 ounces of maple syrup, and then 2 ounces of orange juice and 2 ounces of lemon juice. So here's some freshly squeezed orange juice from Voila. We use Voila a lot because it's a local company. Orange juice, they're based in Oakland. and a lemon juice. And then for a little bit of complexity, we've got the bitters. Bitters adds like a real complexity, a little bit of bitterness. It makes it much more adult. So it's 2 dashes per drink. So I just did 4 dashes. And then this is ready too. So now I'm going to take my little spoon, another spoon, and let's stir it up. And then I'm going to, again, put it on ice. And then we're going to finish this one with a little bit of sparkling water just to dilute it. Here we go. Can you see this on the screen, Ersson? Yep. Cool. Ersson is my dear friend from the, we met at the International Live Events Association, and we've known each other for a number of years now. And she's the president this year. She mentioned that, you mentioned it in her bio, and it's a great organization. People in the events industry get together and learn about each other. So here's a little sparkling water, just as like a topper to help dilute it. And then I'm going to garnish it with a little orange segment. All right. So you can do it on the edge if you want. There we go. Okay, so Ersson, let's toast again. How about this time, God bless our country. Boom. Nailed it. All right, sorry, it's good.
One more question about this. They asked if you could use these must be non-bourbon drinkers. Can you use other than bourbon in that?
Yeah, I would say again, this would probably, I don't know about vodka with bitters. I don't know a lot of drinks that use vodka and bitters, but vodka is so neutral. So I would say, yeah, again, vodka. I bet this would be good with gin. I bet it would be good with tequila too. You know, it's all about balance. When you're making, because we make up cocktails all the time, and what I'm thinking about is, you know, the strength of the alcohol, the acidity of the fruit juices, if I'm using fruit juices, the sweetness, and that can come from sugar or you know, tonic or you know, again, fruit juice can have sweetness in it. And then the complexity will come from bitters or, you know, some of the like herbal things that people throw into cocktails. So you just have to kind of have like a good balance of sweetness, acidity, strength of the alcohol. And then sometimes you just need to dilute it a little bit. I've made really delicious cocktails where we were like, what's not quite right about this? And it was just like too strong. So once you shook it over ice and gave it a little water, it just made it loosened it up a little bit, made it less intense. Okay. So we've got our 2 cocktails. Now it's time to eat. We're going to do these 2 hors d'oeuvres. We're going to start out with fresh guacamole with homemade tortilla chips. And I'm just going to quickly make sure that my oil is getting hot. I think it is. And I'm going to show you how to cut up all the stuff for the guacamole. And it's a really simple recipe. It's a recipe that I learned how to make when I was in Los Angeles. I was like 20 years old. I was at this restaurant. They came up with a cart to make tableside guacamole. And I watched with fascination. And all it is good avocados, fresh tomato, diced yellow onions, salt and pepper. And you got to use a good amount of salt. And then fresh lime juice, and that's it. We don't use cilantro, we don't use garlic, we don't use sour cream, we don't use mayo. No cumin, because I don't know, I think those things overcomplicate it. The flavor of the avocado is so delicious. The salt really brings out the flavor. The acidity balances it out with the lime juice. The tomato brings like juice and fresh sweetness and its own flavor. The onion obviously brings that kind of savory onion flavor, and that's all you need. So, and what's special about this is we're going to make freshly fried tortilla chips, which really elevates the whole thing. And that's what's really going to take this to a wow for you. Then after that, we're going to make something called a Truffle Parmesan Aioli, which is a recipe that I have made for years. I don't know why. I just invented it, I think, because, you know, I had something at a restaurant that had like truffle and Parmesan, and I just thought those flavors are so yummy together with garlic. And so we did that. Hey, and you know what I realized? I don't have my champagne, my vinegar. So will you give me one of the bottles of, I think it's going to be a bottle of vinegar in that cabinet there. There you go. Thanks, Ersson. Okay, so let's get going with the guacamole. Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you. Okay, so let's get going with the guacamole. I've got a bowl I'm gonna put everything into, and I've got ripe avocados, ripe tomato. I used 2 small ones instead of 1 medium, which the recipe calls for. I'm gonna use about 1/4 of this onion, and then I got the lime juice. So I'll put this stuff right here. And first I'll show you all how to make, oh, can you guys hear my doggy? If she comes into the screen, I'm gonna show you guys my doggy. First I'm gonna show you how to cut these avocados. So first you wanna cut it in half, lengthwise. Be careful, watch those fingers. And then here's a really great way to take the pit out. You wanna keep your eye on the ball there. And then I just do that. That's our compost bin. And again, I'm gonna use 2 avocados here. So cut it in half. Use your knife. Well, keep your eyes on it. And then it just comes right out real easy. Okay, and then I'm gonna use a nice soup spoon to get this into the bowl. There we go. And again, here I'm gonna put this compost where I can get to it. And then you just easily scoop along the skin, and it goes real fast and easy. These are pretty much perfect avocados. I got lucky with these. And then the next move is going to be, and you can do like a whole thing where you cut up the avocado, but I've got a mashed potato masher here, and that's gonna do the job. So notice I'm not gonna stir these up or break them up now. I'm gonna put all the ingredients in, and then I'm gonna mix it up together. You don't need to waste your time stirring the ingredients multiple times. I'm also gonna make sure I add the salt and pepper before I start stirring it so that the salt and pepper all gets all mixed in. It's just more efficient. Okay, tomatoes. So tomatoes are tricky. You gotta use a really sharp knife. This knife, I just sharpened it, so let's see if it'll work. I'm just gonna use this steel. Some of you may know how to do this, but you just wanna hold it exactly perpendicular to you. And then you kind of, the hard part is you need to have a consistent angle, right? You're going for like a 22 degrees here. So, and then you do that. And what that does is it aligns the magnetic poles or something. I don't know if it's poles, but it aligns the magnetic elements in the knife and it makes it sharper. It's crazy. So I've got these little plum tomatoes. These barely have a core to them at all, so I'm not even gonna worry about it. So I'm just gonna cut these up. I'm gonna use the same technique I use for onions, which is you cut it lengthwise and then you go crosswise. Luckily this knife is sharp. And then again, so the knife isn't sharp enough to work that well with this, but it's working. And Allison, do you have any questions while I'm doing this?
Yes, I do. So what is the dish you prepared for Barack Obama?
Well, I was lucky enough to cater a fundraiser. My wonderful client, Jill, threw a fundraiser for him, excuse me, when he was trying to get the nomination. So he's in San Francisco and they had a big party at their home and he gets whisked in and spends like an hour there. And he doesn't eat much. I don't think they eat much at catered events because it's probably dangerous, etc. But not because catered food is dangerous, but because they're just probably under so much pressure, and they can't be like spilling food on their tie. And so he came in and when he walked in the door, I was like, whoa, that guy's got some star power. And on his way out, he was just so careful to see all the workers and sort of say thank you. And I said, did you eat anything? And he said, oh, no. And I said, oh, you got to try something. And he looked around and he saw some dessert on a tray. And he said, well, what's that? I said, it's pumpkin pecan cheesecake. And he popped one in his mouth and he said, that's delicious. So that was pretty darn cool.
Very nice. Another question is, what type of oil do you use?
What type of oil I use? Well, for the frying, I'm going to use canola oil. And that's a really good question because there's a lot of conversation about what oils are safe and healthy oils and what are not as good. Canola oil is, has recently in the last, 10, 20 years been considered a healthy oil. Some people don't think it's actually the ideal oil because it requires a lot of effort and maybe a little bit of some chemical to extract the oil from the seed. But it works really well for frying, and there aren't too many other good choices. Now people are using avocado oil. It has its own flavor. It's pretty expensive. Also, rice bran oil is considered really great. But I tend to use canola oil for deep frying.
Okay.
So here's the onion. I cut it in half. I peeled it. I tried to leave the core a little bit intact, right? And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm cutting it this way. And then again, this way. You gotta be careful. Watch, keep your eye on the wall there, because it's very easy to cut your fingertips if you're not watching. And then I'm just gonna cut it a third way crosswise, and my onion's all diced up. So you don't have to spend a bunch of time dicing. It's all perfect as it is. Okay, there we go. So this is probably too much onion. So I'm gonna just use about, I don't know, maybe 2/3 of this. I do like onion. There we go. Okay, so we've got the avocado, the tomato, the onion in here. And then I'm gonna do a nice, generous amount of kosher salt. I'm very confident with my seasoning because I've done it so much. I've used my hands for so many years that I know exactly how much the right amount of salt feels like. But you don't want to be too careless. You can always add more salt, but you can't take it away. That being said, it does need a lot of salt. This is some freshly ground pepper. This is some really beautiful peppercorns that we got, I think when we were in, no, we didn't get them when we were in Cambodia. We were lucky enough to go to Cambodia, my husband and I, in January. And we're very grateful we made it. We went there and we thought, oh, maybe we shouldn't go to Cambodia, but at that time it seemed okay. And on the way back, everyone on the plane was wearing a mask. So it was pretty intense. But we had such a great experience, and this beautiful red peppercorns are something that we tried there. So now here's the lime. These are really small limes. I use a lot of lime juice, probably more than you might think. And I love this tool. This is a citrus squeezer. I talk about this citrus squeezer whenever I can. It is so useful, and you can find these everywhere. They're at the supermarket. You can find them at online at Sur La Table. You can find them everywhere now. So I think I'm gonna use all these because they are really small. But you might just need 1 lime or 1.5 limes, but these were small. Okay, so now I've got everything.
Can I ask you a question about that lime, the juicer? You know how you put it in backwards? You know how some people put it in? What's the right way to?
I'm so glad you asked, actually. I usually talk about that. Cut side down. It's counterintuitive. You do not want to put it in mirroring the shape of the bottom, because what actually happens is you put it in flat side down, and then the pressure just sort of really gives it gets the most juice out. Otherwise you're kind of you're not disturbing it enough. So that's a really, really good question, Allison.
Thank you.
Okay, cool. So we've got this, and then I'm just gonna mash it up, and I can actually smell that my oil is hot enough. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just let this sit for a minute, and I'm going to go, Ersson, if you want to follow me over to the stove, I'm checking this oil with my hands. I can feel like a heat coming off of it. It actually feels like it might be just a touch too hot. So I'm just going to turn it down just a little bit. And I'm going to show you over here. Sorry, Ersson, you're going to have to kind of roll with me a bit. But I'm going to show you here how to just cut up these corn tortillas. I've got these yellow corn tortillas. These are I think this is like a 6-inch, might be no, actually these are 4-inch. You can use any size, but these are 4-inch. And then I just take the corn tortillas, I cut them in half, and then I cut them into wedges so that you get 6 wedges from each tortilla, okay? And then I'm just gonna go over to the stove, and I'm just gonna kind of drop these in. Now you gotta be careful. You wanna kind of think of going in this direction. If you throw these in a certain way, it's gonna splash back at you. So I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna kind of go like that. I'm going to kind of try to have the momentum kind of slightly just away from me. And I'm separating these out. There we go. And see how, can you see them frying? So see how they're bubbling right away. This was a good temperature on the oil. You can also use a deep fryer if you have one, and that'll kind of give you the right temperature automatically without having to struggle with it at all. So I don't want to overcrowd these. Sometimes if I'm feeling lazy, I'll sort of do too many at once, but you get more of an uneven product if you crowd it too much. And it also just depends on how much oil you put in the pan. I have about an inch of oil in here because I didn't want to waste too much oil. We're not cooking that much of them, and I just don't like to waste. So you can see they're already starting to kind of puff up a little bit, and I don't really need to mess with them so much, but I'm just trying to make sure that none of them stick together too much. Okay, so while that's going, I'm just going to finish up here with the guacamole. So it didn't take long for me to just get that avocado all mashed up. And now I'm going to take the spoon that I used to just stir it up. And I see there are some pieces in here that still were a little bit chunky, so I'm just using the spoon to break them up. Some of you might like chunkier guacamole. Some of you might like smoother. I'm just looking over at the chips. I think I'm just going to turn up the heat a little bit, because now that they sort of absorbed that initial blast of heat, you want them to be kind of sizzling pretty fast. If they're not sizzling at all when you put them in, that means that the oil wasn't hot enough. And if they have this huge thing of smoke or whatever when you first put them in, then that means it's possible the oil was too hot. You want the oil to be between 350 and 375 degrees, maybe a few degrees higher than 375 initially, because when you throw the tortilla chips in there, it's going to reduce the heat immediately. It takes it down a number of degrees right away. So sometimes if you kind of prophylactically get it hot in advance, that makes a difference. Okay, so I'm going to taste this, and maybe I'll let Ersson taste it too. And we'll see if it's got the right amount of salt. Okay, watch your shirt, Ersson. Maybe a little more salt. It's pretty good. I just love guacamole. Okay, so I'm just keeping an eye on those tortilla chips. I probably should have, ideally, I probably should have put the, probably should have put the heat up a little higher. Okay, here we go. Can you see that? So I'm just gonna put this in a bowl. People eat a lot of this. So you don't have to make the food too complicated, because if you make a lot of delicious guacamole with tortilla chips and a couple of other things, everyone's going to be very happy, because that way they can just feel free to binge on this. Okay. All right, how's this doing? So these are getting closer. You can see they're starting to, can you hear that? I don't know if you can hear that, but they're clattering a little bit, which means they're starting to get crisp. But their color is really blonde right now, so they're not done. So I'm going to give it just another moment or two. Meanwhile, I've got a pot of water boiling, and this is going to be where I'm going to show you how I'm going to do my next dish, which is the asparagus with the truffle parmesan aioli. All right. So meanwhile, I've got, in preparation here, I've got a pan with some paper towel. And, I left this out because sometimes this is a good tool. I don't actually have the perfect tool. The perfect tool for probably taking these out of the pan would be something like this. But since we're deep frying and it's hot oil, the plastic isn't probably so perfect. The oil's too hot to do plastic. So if I had something like this that was metal, that would be the perfect thing. But I'm pretty comfortable using tongs for almost everything, so that's fine. And this is the kind of thing that could work too if you want to be more careful to drain the tortilla chips as they come out of the pan. All right. So I would say that my oil, in the end, it was perfect temp when I put them in, but then the flame under the pan was a little too low, which means that the oil absorbed. That the chips went in, it lowered the heat of the oil, and then I didn't have enough heat under it to counteract the reduction in temperature, and that's why they're kind of just going a little bit on the slow side. It's not bad, but just my general instinct about how long this normally would take is saying like, man, they're taking a little longer than they need to. You know what I'm going to do? Meanwhile, I'm just going to start talking about the next thing we're doing, and I'm just going to clean off my cutting board. I hate to waste, but it's just a little bit of onion. Don't tell. There we go. And I'm going to just clean up my mess a little bit. I think I'm probably done with this. And I'm done with this.
Hugh, can I ask you, someone wanted to know if they could use red onion instead of the yellow onion?
Absolutely, absolutely. A lot of people, my sister Nina loves to use red onion. Some of you might know Nina Rubner. She's one of my very favorite people. And red onion is fine. It's like a sweeter flavor, but I just like the pungency of the white onion up against the sweetness of the tomatoes and the creaminess of the avocado. I think the pungent, kind of more acrid flavor of the yellow onion is the perfect choice, but either one works. Okay, so I think now that I'm cleaned up, I think I'm gonna call these. Ersson, can you see them? Okay, cool. So they're like a beautiful light golden color, and you can almost hear them clattering now. There we go. And meanwhile, I'm just going to turn this off. There we go. So I'm going to add a little bit of salt on these. And I'm going to let them cool for just a couple minutes while I get the next thing going. And then Ersson and I are going to have to do a little taste test. Obviously, guacamole and chips is not super COVID friendly, so I'll give Ersson a little plate with her own stuff, so we're not dipping into the same. And you can do that for parties. Like, we've been doing a lot of catering with, COVID safe guidelines. And one of the things you can do is just make a little platter for each of your groups, and you seat them separately outside, 6 feet away, and everybody can have their own little platter of food. And that works out really well. And, normally, and if you want to be really, really careful and thoughtful, then you would be, wearing a mask while you're preparing the food. But I didn't want to do that for this presentation, but generally, that's a good idea if you want to be really extra thoughtful and careful. Okay, so Ersson, I think it's time to sample. What do you think?
Agree.
Okay, good. So, there you go.
Could you add jalapenos to the guacamole?
You could add jalapenos, yeah. I'm not a spicy guy. That's not my thing. But I'm sassy, but I'm not spicy. So here and now, I've got this plate. I'll just take a little bit for myself, and we'll do a little taste test here. Did we nail it?
Nailed it.
All right. Don't be jealous. You guys can make it too. Oh my God, it's so good. Okay. I think you're not supposed to do this on TV. You're supposed to be like, and like make believe you're eating, but not actually eat. But, I gotta eat. Okay, so I'm washing my hands. Why don't I actually do a nice wash here? And now we're gonna make the asparagus and truffle parmesan aioli. So to start out, I'm just going to get my ice bath ready for the asparagus. And an ice bath is a bowl of water with ice. And it can be mostly ice. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to cook the asparagus for 2 minutes. I have found that asparagus takes exactly 2 minutes to cook. Unless, of course, it's super thick or maybe super, super thin. But for the most part, nice big boiling pot of water, very salty like the sea. People get confused. There's water that you want to cook pasta in, which you should not make salty like the sea. It should be less salty than the sea, because pasta absorbs a lot of water when you're cooking with it, But vegetables don't really absorb the water. They just kind of cook in it. The salt brings out their flavor somehow. It's a very complicated scientific thing. And then for the most part, the water is gone and it leaves a little residue of salt on the outside of the vegetable. So when you're cooking vegetables, for the most part, salty like the sea. And I've already put salt in the water. So for the asparagus, You want it to be in bunches. And the easiest way to do it, honestly, is you take the bunches that you get at the supermarket and you wrap them. And what you do is you want to even them out. So you can take the rubber band off, and you want to get the tips all kind of about the same length, right? And then you can trim the bottoms, and you're trimming it where it's thick and woody. You can almost see sort of, every asparagus is different, but it kind of changes from this green color to a kind of maybe a lighter color, and it's woody. And so you want to cut off the woody parts. And then what you can do is, if you've got rubber bands that the asparagus came with, you just put the rubber band back on, and you've got these bunches. And it's just traditional to cook them in bunches because it's less messy and chaotic in the pot. There's more of a chance that you're going to break one. Another thing I'll talk to you about is just like how to pick asparagus. This is really important. I actually struggled to pick asparagus today because asparagus isn't really in season, but I wanted to demonstrate it because there is a December season for asparagus. It actually comes from South America, but a lot of times for holidays, people want to do asparagus because it feels like a special occasion vegetable. And so you want to use all your senses to pick your asparagus. There was so much bad asparagus at the supermarket today, and I found one package that looked beautiful like this. And first of all, you want to look at it. You want to see that the spears are beautiful and intact and look fresh. They don't look withered. They don't look, withered basically. Another big thing is smell. These barely smell. There's a light smell of like maybe the faintest hint of cut grass, but barely. If they smell strongly of cut grass, it means they're past their prime. They're starting to kind of mold or sort of deteriorate, right? So these don't smell much at all. So these are really beautiful, and I'm really glad I was lucky enough to find them. So you want to use your sight, and and then you can also touch them if they. I mean, this isn't very COVID friendly, but in the future, when you go to the supermarket, you can touch them, and if they're wet, that means they're rotting, and you don't want to use them. So it's really important to start out with good fresh asparagus. And then since I don't have any rubber bands at home today, I'm going to do the old traditional way of wrapping it up in twine. So again, I've sort of lined up all the heads, and I'm just trimming the ends. These were already trimmed pretty nicely. And then I'm going to take a little bit of twine.
Would this work with green beans or something else?
You don't need to do this for anything else. Like green beans, you can just throw in a pot. Yeah. So, and then, there's a lot of different kind of knots you can do. You want to do kind of like a slip knot. And honestly, it's been so long since I've done this, I just didn't do the right knot. But, you just want to tie them up into bunches, and then you can use your knife to cut the twine. Okay. So just to save time, I know these are all trimmed. I'm just going to throw it all in. So I'm opening up my pot, and I have enough water in here. I'm going to throw it all in. And make sure that the water is boiling. It's on full blast. And I'm going to close up. You're not supposed to close it off fully. There's something about the asparagus as it's cooking gives off sort of a chemical that you want to escape. But I'm going to mostly cover it up because I want to have the water get hot again as fast as possible. And now I'm going to set the timer for 2 minutes because it just takes about 2 minutes. Okay, so I'm going to let that go. And meanwhile, I'm going to demonstrate the truffle parmesan aioli. Okay, so this has mayonnaise, Parmigiano Reggiano, lemon juice, a little bit of vinegar, champagne vinegar or red wine vinegar, garlic, salt and pepper, and truffle oil, which I have right here. I love truffle oil. And I'm just going to make this right in this little container because I know that all the other ingredients are very minor, so it'll all fit in this little container. This is 1 cup of mayonnaise in a 2-cup container, okay? And it's going to get some garlic. And I'll show you all my little garlic tricks because everybody always wants a good garlic trick, right? So you take the clove and you take the flat of your knife and you just pressure it until you hear a little crushing sound, okay? And that takes the peel right off. My husband has gadgets for taking the peels off, but I don't like gadgets. Although of course I love my citrus squeezer, and I'm actually going to show you another gadget. So Scratch that. I do like that. Okay, so I've got this garlic clove, and here's a really, really fast way to deal with garlic. I've got this zester that I use for lemon zesting, but it's also great for garlic. So I just take the garlic and I just zest it. And it's only a quarter clove of garlic for this recipe. So that's probably good enough. I'll put a little bit more in. Okay, and then I'm gonna just kind of knock it into there. That was so easy, right? Took no time at all. And then it gets, you know, I can follow the recipe exactly if I want to, but you know, it's also kind of a loose recipe, but it's gonna get 2 teaspoons of vinegar. And salt and pepper. Oh, there's my asparagus. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this bowl that was the ice bowl for the cocktails. I'm gonna add a little water, right? And then I'm going to turn my timer off. And I'm gonna check on this asparagus here. I've got my tongs that I was using before. Okay. I'm smelling it. It smells done. There's a smell of raw asparagus, and then there's a smell of good cooked asparagus, right? And the more you learn to use your sense of smell as you're cooking, the more you will feel comfortable and at ease, and you'll catch things. Like you'll start to notice like, oh, that's the smell of muffins that are done perfectly. And if you've ever burnt something in the oven, like a baked good or whatever, you know that it has a smell and it's not a good one. And so you always want to be kind of attuned to your sense of smell because it's going to guide you as you're cooking. Okay, so I'm throwing these in the ice bucket, in the bowl of ice. Now, this was probably too small of a bowl, but I'm going to, I'm just gonna put some more water in here, and it's gonna stop the cooking, and the ice water stops the cooking, and so I'm going to let this go for maybe a minute, and then I'm gonna drain it because I don't want the asparagus to absorb a bunch of flavorless ice water. I just want it to cool down so it doesn't continue cooking, right? Okay, so I'll let this sit right here and we'll continue on with the truffle parmesan aioli. Okay, so we've got the chives and I'll show you how to cut these up. This is about a quarter bunch of chives. And if you really want to be fast, you'll probably cut them in half and make it a thicker bunch here. And then I'm going to use what's called the claw. Whenever you're chopping, you want to have your fingers in the claw, and that protects your fingertips from getting cut off. And it actually it takes time to learn. It's one of those things like it's like rock climbing. Your fingers have to get used to it. So, and then if you want to use the sharpest knife you have, and you're going in what almost like an elliptical train. It's exactly like an elliptical trainer. If you've ever done an elliptical trainer, you know that your feet go in this oval circle, and you have the knife touching the board. The tip of your knife touches the board, and there's a little bit of pressure, and then you're sort of doing this elliptical motion, and you're trying to make these chives as small as possible. If you're working in a really, really fancy restaurant, that's one of the things they do to haze you, is they teach you to cut chives, and they just keep saying finer, 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 finer. The chives should be just totally consistent and tiny and uniform. Luckily, I'm not, my gut was never really in the super, super, super refined fine dining. I enjoy it, but I find that food often to be a little overly rich, overly salty. It always gave me a stomach ache, even when I was like, in my early 20s. So I like more rustic cooking. When I came to San Francisco, I was living in New York for 12 years, or 8 years. When I came to San Francisco, I ended up going to Delfina, and I was like, that's it, Chez Panisse also. Though that's the style that I love, that is so simple and elegant and classic and European that I really love. So here's the chives. And let me just check the recipe and make sure I got everything in there. Oh, Parmesan cheese. Okay, so it's 3 tablespoons of Parmesan cheese. But again, it's really flexible. Like, Parmesan cheese is delicious. No one's going to say, oh, this has too much Parmesan cheese in it. So I've got Parmesan cheese, the garlic, the vinegar, salt and pepper, the truffle oil, and the chives. Oh, I don't think I put the truffle oil in yet. So the truffle oil is about 2 teaspoons, but again, it's really flexible. Okay, and then we're gonna stir this up. Any questions, Allison?
You might have answered this when Ersson asked about the green beans, but someone said that they don't like asparagus.
Oh.
What would be the
this
other veg?
sauce, honestly, here, I'm gonna get some water. This sauce goes with so many things. You can serve this sauce with roast beef. You can put this on a sandwich with beef or ham or turkey with cheese. You can serve it with almost any vegetable. Amazing with radishes. You could use it as a sauce on like a tomato salad. So it's pretty versatile.
Okay, that's good to know.
I just love asparagus. So let's see here.
How can people find your meal delivery service?
Oh, Ersson asked how people can find my meal delivery service. Funny you should ask, Ersson. It's well, I mean, you know, what happened is, you know, March came around and I was at a catering convention just as everything was going down. And you can imagine the caterers at the catering convention were freaking out. And in between phone calls where I was, oh, you know, we have not been drinking enough. In between phone calls, oh, thank God. In between phone calls, we were getting cancellations, and then I was making other calls to people in my company. Okay, start making soups and stews and putting them in containers in the freezer. And we created a new division called Green Leaf Provisions, which gives us, you know, gives busy families who have, you know, maybe 2 jobs, or maybe you just don't want to cook all the time. You know, you've got a lot of kids and you're trying to juggle everything. And so it just gives busy people a break from cooking. And there's both fresh things that you can get and eat, you know, all week, but also you get the frozen soups and stews and mac and cheese and eggplant parmesan, stock your freezer, and then whenever you're in a situation where you don't feel like cooking, you're all set and ready. Okay, so I'm just draining this asparagus. Thanks for asking, Ersson. Good question. So I'm a bad person because I did put some of the asparagus in loose, so I was not demonstrating professionally. So got the asparagus. I'm just going to cut the strings. What did I do with my? Oh, here's a little scissors. Okay, and this string is made out of cotton, so it's compostable, and it's all beautiful and drained. And then I'm just going to put it on a big platter. And you know, you kind of want to keep them all lined up in the same direction. That's actually another part of why you cook it with the strings around it, because you want to, it just looks more elegant when it's all lined up, okay? So, you know, you can kind of line it up like that. And then you can put the sauce in a, well here, first I gotta taste the sauce and make sure it's delicious. Oops. It's delicious. Okay. And then you just put it in a bowl. So, and then it's such an easy little presentation, but it looks really elegant. You can kind of fan out the asparagus. Am I getting you? Yeah, I'm getting you. Okay, so now I'm going to give a little something to Ersson to taste. And here, I'll give her a little extra. And a little bit of sauce. She can have her own. There you go. Okay, you taste it, Ersson. Here, and I'll have my own little one too. So I just trying to model good safety and behavior. So that is basically everything. Hold on. It's so good.
And why do you tie up the asparagus again?
Ersson just asked, why do we tie up the asparagus again? it keeps it from breaking in the pot, and it keeps it from jumbling and getting all and in different angles. Like anytime in a restaurant situation when you're cooking asparagus, you always want it to line up the same way. So you don't want to get it all jumbled and then have to reline it up.
And rubber bands are okay too?
And rubber bands okay. For years, I thought you had to tie them all. You had to take the rubber bands off and trim them and then tie them into bunches. And then I was like walking down the street. I had a restaurant in Brooklyn when I was in my late 20s. I was walking down the street in one of the other restaurants. They were prepping their asparagus and they were cooking it with the rubber bands. And I was like, you can't do that. Like the rubber bands are going to taste, you can taste the rubber bands, but I guess the rubber does not impart any flavor to the water. So I learned, and that's the thing you learn when you're a professional cook. That's the difference between going to culinary school, where they teach you there's only one way to do everything. And when you're a professional cook in restaurants, you learn there's always more than one way to do something. I was lucky enough to not, I started cooking professionally before I thought I needed to go to culinary school, and then everybody there validated I didn't need to go to culinary school. I could just learn on the job. So that's something anybody can do, and you can always reach out to me. I know they're going to give my contact info. So if anybody's interested in being a cook or professionally, or even just like as a side thing, reach out to me and I'll talk you through it. So I think that's pretty much everything. Ersson, thank you so much for being my sidekick and questioner and camera person and hype person. Oh, and Ersson's coming to have a drink with me.
Oh, good. And you know what, can I ask? Thank you, Ersson. I have a couple more questions that people wanted to hear.
Okay, great.
What is your favorite cocktail or drink all time?
Probably the one that's in my hand, meaning whatever's in my hand. We make a tamarind margarita that I really love, and it's just like a margarita and instead of like a sugar simple syrup, we use mixed tamarind with water, and then we serve it with diced mango, and this like beautiful ancho chili, cinnamon, salt, sugar rim. So it's got like spice and sweetness and cinnamon, and so I guess that's my favorite. But again, it's probably just whatever's the one in my hand. I actually don't drink very much, and I don't mean to like over promote drinking, but it seems like a good time for it right now.
I think so. The other question, someone was asking, what are people ordering for the holidays this year? Yeah.
Great question. Well, we've got a prefix Thanksgiving menu, and it's really beautiful. Serves you can order it for 4 or 8 or 12. And, it's got like, turkey and our own homemade cornbread stuffing and a beautiful salad and these like deep fried Brussels sprouts with pecorino romano cheese, sheep's milk cheese, like a Parmesan, and a sweet potato puree, and then 3 different desserts, and it's really, really good. So that's what we're doing for Thanksgiving. And then for Christmas, we're doing, the holiday season, we've got like tons of things. We're doing tons of gift baskets. We've got like a special kind of boxed meal thing that we can do for, individuals, like in little boxes, or gift baskets, tons of gift baskets. I'm definitely going to be pushing for the very, very small parties we're doing in people's backyards. I'm going to be pushing comfort food. I mean, if there was ever a time for comfort food, it's now. It never goes out of style, but
yeah,
I think more than ever,
right,
as they say.
And where do they find this? Is this on your Greenleaf Provisions?
Yeah, greenleafprovisions.com is one of our websites. You can learn about like everything we do at gromangroup.com. And we also just rebuilt one of our old websites. It was called greenleafplatters.com, and that's where we do high-end party platters and deliver them and set them up. Trixie, come be part of the demonstration. Come here. We do high-end party platters, and we deliver them and we set them up, and then we leave. So that's like a no staffed option that's super elegant. But when the pandemic started, we hijacked that website and we had to rebuild it into the Greenleaf Provisions site because we needed to move fast. So now we've rebuilt the Greenleaf Platters site, greenleafplatters.com, and that's a really great option too. So Greenleaf Provisions, Greenleaf Platters, Groman Group, and there's also Hugh Groman Catering, but that site's actually under construction, so you'll check that out in the future, and it's going to be beautiful.
Well, that was great. We got a lot of remarks saying how wonderful you were, and that they could watch your cooking show daily or weekly, or
that's sweet.
The same way.
Okay, if you really want it to be wonderful, I'm going to get Trixie. Hold on a second. Now that we're done cooking, it's time to show off Trixie. She's my protege, and she's going to inherit all my companies.
She's so cute. How old is Trixie?
She's a forever puppy. She's never gonna die. She's 8 years old.
Oh, she's cute.
Oh my God, she's so cute. Can you imagine? And you know what? She's softer than she looks.
She looks very soft, actually.
What kind of dog is Trixie?
Trixie's a poodle Pomeranian. And she's like got some other stuff. She's also got some Great Pyrenees in her, which is like a giant dog, which is ridiculous.
Yeah, that's funny.
So thank you so much for having me. Was there any other questions?
That's all. Someone asked what it was like to work at Gramercy Tavern.
Great question. You know, it's so funny. It was intense. I got that job. It was like it was a really big deal at the time when they opened that restaurant. They spent $10 million building it, and that is 1990, $4. So it was like a $20 million place. And I talked my way in, and Tom Colicchio was the chef. Tom Colicchio, who's the judge of Top Chef, he was my boss. And I wanted so badly to know what I was doing, and I really didn't. So it was painful. But compared to other situations, it was a great situation because Tom was trying to elevate the experience of working in a restaurant from a hostile, horrible place to something slightly less hostile and horrible. So it was mostly stressful because it was so painful that I desperately wanted to know what I was doing, but I didn't. And it was like jumping right into the frying pan. So it was an amazing experience. I learned so much. I can remember every little thing about, I can't remember much, including like my own name sometimes, but I can remember everything I learned, all these moments when, the aha moments when like I was cooking something and I was frantically cooking it and I couldn't keep up and it was so intense, and he just came up and he lowered the temperature on the stove a little bit. And I was like, oh, like, don't let the stove control you, you control the stove. So there's all these moments that were so intense. There was a moment I lit the fire. I was working in the indoor grill area and I lit the wood fire, but I didn't turn the flue on. So the whole restaurant filled up with smoke. So I learned you got to turn the flue on.
That's great. So you worked side by side with Tom?
Occasionally. Tom was mostly like administrating, so he wasn't out in the kitchen that much. I'm really glad you asked because I wanted to say one other thing about Tom, which is like one of the profound things I learned there. He really kept his cool, but there was this one situation where he got into a fight with somebody. Like, he was, very nice and respectful, but somebody once, one of the servers who had been there for a long time, they got into a fight about something in the middle of service, and the server got really upset and just said, like, I don't care. And he lost it. And I thought, the only unforgivable thing is to not care. And that has stuck in my gut. It really resonated with me because with my team, we have a lot of different personalities, people, everyone's got their issues and nobody's perfect, but we all care about what we are doing. And if someone doesn't care, I can smell it from a mile away and I cannot stand it. So that was a real lesson. But Tom was very, very respectful and really tried to create a positive environment there. So he was a good guy.
That's great. That's great. Well, I think we're coming to the end of our time. Thank you so much, Hugh. And Carol's going to come in and
thank you very much. Tracy says thank you as well. Bye.
Thank you, Hugh.
Thank you, Hugh. And Trixie's adorable. So thank you for having Trixie join us. Thank you, Hugh. Everything you prepared looks wonderful. The cocktails look really great. I know that we could all use a drink right about now. And so I know a lot of us will go out and purchase all the ingredients and have some cocktails and appetizers to sort of get us through these difficult times. Allison and Ersson, you did a great job. Thank you both for being a part of the evening. I also want to thank our Soul on the Screen sponsors, DP Systems, Kaiser, John Muir, Kiwanis of Walnut Creek, Ersson, who's with Ersson Productions, and of course our Soul on the Screen volunteer committee. I have a lot of people that work with us, helping us put these fundraisers on, and I'm very grateful for the time and energy that our volunteers put into making this all work for us. I hope you all enjoyed the presentation tonight. We look forward to seeing you all on December 3rd for our final webinar of the year. And that webinar will be with the floral department at Diablo Foods, who will help us prepare floral arrangements for the holidays. And so now we'll have some great cocktails, some appetizers, and some beautiful floral arrangements to put together for the holidays. As a reminder, we are selling raffle tickets, and for some really great prizes. We will be drawing the winners of those raffles at the end of the webinar on the 3rd. So be sure and take a look at that and get your tickets. So for more information about tonight's webinar and about the Child Abuse Prevention Council, you will get a follow-up email from us, and it will have a link to Hugh's website, so you can learn more about Hugh and all of the great things that he was talking about having ready and prepared for the holidays. And you can also, you'll learn more about the Child Abuse Prevention Council. Our website will be on the email, and please look us up and learn more about what you were supporting tonight and all the great programs that we're providing throughout the year, throughout this COVID-19 pandemic that we're all dealing with. So thank you again for joining us, and we will see you in December. Good night.